Hey everyone, welcome back to That's Growth Ops. Today we've got a fascinating conversation lined up with Dr. Todd Cherner, an expert in education, innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. Chris and I dive deep into the evolution of AI in education and business, exploring how it's transforming industries and what that means for the future of work. We touch on the ethical challenges AI presents, how companies can stay ahead, and why soft skills are just as important as technical know-how. We also get into some personal stories about sports leadership and the lifelong lessons that we've picked up along the way. Let's dive in. All right, everybody. Today we have a special guest who brings a unique blend of innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship in the realm of education. He's currently directing the Master of Arts in Education, Innovation, Technology, and Entrepreneurship at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Please join me in welcoming education innovator and former teacher turned entrepreneur, Dr. Todd Cherner. Todd, we're thrilled to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. Go Heels.
How wild. So, Todd, would you do me a favor and describe what it is that you do for our universal listeners?
Yeah, so I direct a program, Rich said the full name, Masters of Arts in Educational Innovation, Technology, and Entrepreneurship. We call it the MIGHTY program for our acronym. Higher Ed likes our acronym, so it's the MIGHTY program. And so what we do is we prepare people to work in the field of education, not as teachers, not as administrators, not as school counselors, but literally everything else. So people who want to create apps and websites for education, who do product development for education, who want to be instructional designers, who might want to have a startup and provide educational supplemental services. An example of that in our local community would be Code the Dream, where one of our graduates is the executive director, and they recruit women of color, upskill them with the technical skills, and then they get jobs with large companies doing tech work like Amazon. So any way you can think of education, but not in the preparation of teachers, counselors, or school administrators, that's what we focus on. We have a deep commitment to diversity, equity, belonging. And so we really are focused in those areas, and technology has a lot of thought to it. We bring in a lot of design thinking. Human-centered design is very important. To solve a problem without humans in the situation is probably irresponsible. So we really think about ways to involve humans as we address some very challenging problems in the field of education that have really been accelerated with some of this generative AI and how we handle it. And then we have also different aspects that knock into like augmented reality and virtual reality and a whole bunch of other stuff too.
I mean, I honestly had no idea that that's what you did. And it seems interesting to me that a school, a university like UNC Chapel Hill would allocate resources towards what doesn't seem to me to be like a traditional program. Is this part of a 4-year or 8-year degree, or is this an outside program that people pay for? Is this grant funded? I'm curious about the operational underpinnings of MIGHTY.
Yeah, so MIGHTY is a very unique program. So there's not many programs like this in the world. And so we are a master's level program, and if students want to come in, they can complete the program in 1 to 3 years. And when I started, my first day here was actually April Fool's Day 2019. And if we get into my professional journey, I'll talk about that later. But I started here then. And my dean came in the first day, and he's like, after we do the formal interview and everything, he's like, all right, Todd, let me level with you. We got this cool program. We got like 10 students in it. We have a lot of interest about it, but it needs to be more developed. And, I actually have this sticky right down here that he asked me. He asked me on the first day, and I wrote it down. And he said, what do we want students to know and be able to do when they graduate from the MIGHTY program? And I put it there to think about that because I just want them to have a good mindset. And so when it comes to what we do, yeah, we're a 1 to 3 year program, depending on how students want to do it. And honestly, we compete with students. It's basically us, Harvard, Stanford, University of Pennsylvania, a little bit of Bandy out there in Tennessee. but that's primarily where we compete for students. And to this day, we grew it from when I started 10 students to 46 students right now. And I'm kind of proud. We're the largest master's level program in our School of Education. And if you're on LinkedIn and you're looking for an opportunity, we are hiring an assistant professor.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for turning this into a shameless plug. Anybody that listens know that's like part of my DNA, and it just happens, and you know it. You used a word that I love, and I talk a lot about, and I always talk about it and then say, well, I'm in Monterey, I'm a hippie, which we have alignment there too, but mindset. And it's interesting that you've grown a program that seems to be not only mighty, but focused on an intangible thing. What does mindset mean to you? And then how do you teach it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in orientation, I tell my students a few things. I'm always like, the key to success in the Mighty program, and this goes back to mindset, is to be active, to be coachable, to be innovative, meaning you can take some ideas and think about them in new ways, to be gritty. You need to have that perseverance and that drive to keep going. And then also to be cool. People do not work well with hotheads. I don't work well with hotheads. As soon as you lose your temper, you're done. And like, I think you and I, Chris, we learned that through sports. And then for me, that's been doubled down with being a father now. As soon as you lose it, and I remember I was actually teaching high school English, and I lost it at a student. I hadn't thought about this story in years. I lost it at a student. I was like 25, just yelling at this kid. And she looks at me and she gives me this little move. And she's like, I got you. And she walked out of my classroom. And I'm like, whoa, she totally got me. And I think that was the last time I ever lost my composure with a student. Because she served that up straight up.
Man, you angry is not something I've seen many times, and it has been in sport. And for anyone listening, Todd and I, well, I guess that's how you would hear this technically. Todd and I met in college at University of Central Florida, and we played what I would argue to be the best sport in the world, which is rugby.
Indeed.
And I learned a lot from Todd, even as a young kid. I was quite a hothead when I was young.
Yeah.
I've gotten better. I'm still working on it.
I mean, you had a big motor and a big mouth, bud.
It's true, man. It's true. It's the way that you open up the first aid for students. I'm going to have to follow up with you and get a copy of that, because I think that's how I want to put that into our interview process and first day at growth. Because of the way that you state how you can be successful is just incredibly deliberate and actionable and helpful. And those are powerful. It's a hard combination to get those right in one message, and you nailed it.
Yeah, and I think the other part is I think there's a way of being. And I think if you're going to walk the walk, you need to be that way. And so they have the phrase hip hop is a lifestyle, right? And I think being innovative is also a lifestyle. It's the way you walk through the world. It's the way that you look at different phenomena, different people, different situations, and that's how you process it. And so I think with those attributes that I mentioned earlier, I have to practice them as a faculty member, as a director, as an innovator myself, as a researcher, et cetera, with all the different hats I wear. Because, students, clients, they sniff out phoniness real quick, right? And so if you're not honoring it in the way that you are in the world, then you're kind of phony, and and it doesn't resonate. And so, and you're not authentic. And so I think that's what's really important to me.
Yeah, don't talk about it, be about it. I feel like it's another way to verbalize that action. It's real. It's hard to whether you're interviewing somebody. And is there an interview process for people to join the Mighty program?
We have a more traditional application process, but I'll tell you, in our application, you turn in your resume and your letters of recommendation and yada, yada, yada. But what I find the most interesting is the statement of purpose. What is it that drives you? What is it that we use the word propel? That's our phrase. We propel the world. but what is it that propels you into the Mighty program, and how are you actually going to use the knowledge, skills, and dispositions from the program to advance your career? When I look at the students, I always tell them early, I'm like, your success is my success, so we need to make you successful. And so like that, I when I read those statements of purpose, like I'm looking for people that have ambition, have those attributes, but also like have a genuineness to them. Like they really want to do the work. They're not just like checking a box.
If you have graduates that want to get into the consulting ops CRM space, send them my way, because that what you are giving them and they are receiving from you is what has been the hardest thing for me to find in the wild. That combination of cool and innovative and temperament, all of these things really do combine to create superhumans, like in work and in life.
Yeah.
And they're all one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like skills can be learned with motivation, but like, I know, yeah, I mean, you know, when you meet people and you're just like, this is not going to work, you know?
100%.
Like, yeah, like first impressions, like, and like, I can tell when I like want to work with someone and they're like, no, which is like another skill. You're like, okay, I respect that, you know? We've all been shot down.
No chance. I'm 100% closer right here all day, every day. I'm surprised by the overlap of what I do for work and what you do for work, because it sounds like so much of it is, you know, the training, the soft skills around the hard skills.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a lot of value in soft skills, right? I mean, you have to have the goods, but like, I think the successful people have the soft skills that they're able to package with the goods.
Yeah.
And like, I'm at UNC Chapel Hill. Like, I'm never going to be the smartest guy in the room. Like, just not going to happen. Like, I work with some phenomenal colleagues, like internationally renowned. But like, the soft skills to be able to maneuver higher education, to run a program, to serve your students, to teach well, like that's where I can shine, you know. And so I think it's laying into your assets and acknowledging your areas for improvement, and also understanding how you contribute.
I love the feeling of not being the smartest person in a room. I've had it my whole life, but now as an adult,
I've always found you to be very humble, Vegans.
Thank you. Yeah, oh yeah. Especially in my 20s, I was. Oh my god, I was like, if there's an award, I want it. I mean, Rich works at growth. The intensity that I had then is not lost upon me, and people have a milder but still intense version of wanting to win and be great. That's
yeah. Well, I mean,
you have an intensity. What?
Dude, I mean, it's true. Like winning, like all those soft skills, like you still have to go out and compete, and you still have to win. You know,
Yeah.
like
you got to be your own motivator.
The saying "winners win" is there for a reason. Like
you know, when I originally approached you about joining us today, a lot of it had to do with what I've been seeing on your LinkedIn around like AI and enablement, and it's been kind of like a glisten of in your universe, but in our universe, AI is very loud and in the front of almost every conversation as an enablement tool for companies, taking away jobs. I mean, these big, broad conversation categories are daily instances. Is there a way for you to provide your insight on how AI is being used in the professional business space, and then maybe how you see it being used in the future? Is that too broad of a subject, or does that?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So let me talk a little bit about my background with AI. We can start there. So I'm critical. So like, let's just first call out this for what it is. So there's a lot of legal concerns, challenges with how these large language models came to be. And I will tell you, sorry, you got some text messages. The red bus from Creekside Elementary School is running late today. But you know, I think there's some legal and ethical concerns, huge legal and ethical concerns. And I've actually done a study about how are companies creating frameworks to address the ethical considerations for it. And these companies all over, like I've sampled hundreds of them all over, and it's crazy to see how they do it. Like there's like a do no harm idea, which is like probably you're going to do harm. Like there's environmental concerns. AI is thirsty. It is heating our world. Like it is destroying natural resources. It has a lot of freshwater usage, which is very concerning, right?
Bottles of
And it
water per
also,
100 words, is that like the general estimate?
bottle of water per prompt is what I read last time.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm like, so I'm like, it's sucking up natural resources, like it's using a bunch of energy. So I'm like, let's call that out. And then how are they deploying it? And how are people interacting with it? And like, do you know if you're interacting with AI? Because if you don't know, that becomes problematic too. I do want to give a quick shout out. The best AI framework I have seen from any corporation is actually the Rolls-Royce Corporation. If you actually Google Rolls-Royce and their AI framework, their work, I think, is the best. It's
That's a
insane.
great shout out, and definitely will find that and drop that in the links on the show. That's cool. And Rich is deep in the game. I'm so excited for you guys to
Yeah,
get to know each other.
let me know if you need that. So, I mean, with that being said, there's that. The second thing is, you have a lot of startups that are creating all these Gen AI tools. In education, I tend to really like Holland IQ as the business consultant for educational technology. They're, I think, bar none, is kind of the best. So I follow their stuff. And you can actually get into the AI ecosystem for education, and you have all these startups who are creating this stuff. And I'm like, I show my students a map, and like this map, like think of a giant projector screen, and I took a screenshot of the map. All the icons are like this big. You can't even see them. You have to zoom
1,000
in.
AI startups a week.
Yeah, it's insane. So, like, I think about this in a couple different ways, right? So, first off, like, Rich, we're going to ignore you for a second because you're not old enough. But, like, Chris, what was your first search engine?
Ask Jeeves.
Who, me?
Ask Jeeves, yeah. Chris, yeah, Biggins. What was your first search engine?
Google, for sure.
Google was your first?
Yeah, man. I think so. I wasn't, bro. I failed Comp 101. I don't know why I'm here. And
clearly,
person in the room.
Yeah, so like mine was like Alta Vista, Ask Jeeves, Dogpile, all these old ones. And then what you had is over time you had the search engine wars, and they became Google, which is what you said, Biggins, right? And now that's kind of where it is, right? But like with all these different little smart startups, like they're going to get sucked up, is my prediction. And so I think we're going to see them become much larger, right? And the bigger ones are going to eat the smaller ones as happens. So like you have that. The second thing that I think we need to be thinking about, especially in higher education, is I think we just need to teach basic Gen AI literacy and fluency. I think people are investing, they're like, oh, I have to have this one. Maybe not. Maybe you just need to learn to prompt and to prompt well, and figure out your use cases and then make some decisions. Like I know the tools that I use. I'm not going to plug any of them, but I know the tools that I use and the ones that I like. And I'll tell you, I spent a long time learning to prompt them and to prompt them well. And I have my own strategy for how I do it and how I teach it, and it's going to be published soon. But it's
Is that why you're not plugging them?
Okay. It's called the role input output is what I call it, right? Mm-hmm. And so like the role is state how you want to use it, contextualize it. Input, state what you want it to do. Like it needs to do an action with a verb. Output, state the way you want it to show up. Personally, I like my stuff in bullets and lists with a quick summary. And if you can knock that out and you can prompt it well, and it takes me like 10 minutes to teach it. It's not that hard, right? But like once you have this basic foundational scaffold or strategy for prompting, then I think you can get really complex with it and have it to do some really cool stuff. But just to go in there and treat an LLM like a search engine, I think is very foolhardy. So I think you have that. And then the other part too is I think as you grow in complexity, like it's not just like Gen AI literacy, right? Because you hear that a lot. I think that's a mistake. I think you got to think about it kind of more like reading. So my background's actually in English education and literacy, and yada, yada, yada.
I still have your copy of Dante's Inferno in my house.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it if you gave it back.
I will eventually.
No, because like if you think about how kids start to read, right? They have till up to third grade to start to read. and then they quote unquote read to learn from like third grade to like middle school. And then they have something called disciplinary literacy. So like in high school, you learn to read like a scientist, or you learn to read like a historian. So with Gen AI literacy, I think there's this basic level of literacy about these tools. Like, what do they do? How do they do it? What are the concerns? How do I prompt them? And then I think there's Gen AI literacy 2.0, which is like, how do I prompt Gen AI literacy specifically for marketing purposes? Or how do I prompt it to develop curriculum and lesson plans in my world? Or how do I do it to do an SEO for my website that's actually effective, right? And so I think there are all these different use cases. And something that you don't know, Biggins, is my wife quit her job on October 1st. So earlier this week, she like quit it like cold. And like she was a global manager of training for a very large company. And she quit it to open up the soapandshine.com, which is like her own soap storage. Rented out a place, brick and mortar. November 8th is our grand opening.
Yay.
Yeah,
I'm
super
a customer,
exciting.
by the way. Just a shameless plug.
Yeah.
Great soap.
Yeah, and body butters. And no, but what was interesting is like, so we had like our little baby website, which we made on Wix, but our POS system was all on Square, and we were losing a lot of money by having a website on Wix, but it had to all connect to Square, so we would save a lot of money, but it required us to convert the website. And so I converted the website for her, and I built the original Wix website back in like 2020, like pre-Gen AI stuff. And my God, the quality of it, the SEO work, like not only did it save me a lot of time, but the quality goes up, right? But then it goes like, well, where are you actually using the Gen AI? I use it all on the back end because like all the fun little descriptions and stuff, like, I drink a beer and write a soap description and it's hysterical. And like, you know what's not funny? ChatGPT. like,
Yes.
you're like, it doesn't say funny stuff. Like it's very lame, which goes back to the soft skills that we were talking about earlier. And like, that's something that Gen AI doesn't have.
Right.
It aims to please. That's how it's programmed to work.
And you should check out Dharmesh, the co-founder of HubSpot. He talks a lot about AI stuff, and hopefully he's going to pass the Todd AI sustainability test, framework test. So I'll connect that separately. It's interesting that you talked about your own use of AI for marketing prowess, like SEO, as a layman, non-trained, non-practicing marketer. That is the same experience that I had where I said, I don't think I feel comfortable selling marketing services anymore because it's not the way that we operate with companies. I would rather empower companies to fill a role internally and leverage these tools than end up in this kind of like back and forth and arguably a promptable service. But it's changed growth. I mean, we were a growth marketing firm. And then as these things started to evolve 3-4 years ago, it just felt like an intrinsic difference where now our superpowers should be training, educating, frameworks, and things like that. And so it's interesting that as an individual, you're using it. That's a great use for it in my
I think
opinion.
like anything around like data entry and just like the grind, like let's put that up there. Like so I think there's that. Like
Yeah. I mean, so you it sounds like you leverage some level of large language model AI to help with your book writing. Is that an accurate statement?
I mean, to a degree, but like I won't have it write chunks of text. Like I prefer it. I use it a lot more for like product development purposes.
That's great.
So like for example, I mentioned I really enjoy augmented reality earlier, and my background's in literacy, and so I've created an immersive reading experience that we're bringing to market in the next year, and all our assets for this book are Gen AI created, and we give credit to Gen AI in the book. And but it's this idea that like you can go into this area, the space, right? And through your device, you can actually read a book, and the way you read it is you just turn to the right, and you become completely immersed in the actual book. And
That's
so
cool.
back when I was a high school English teacher, I would teach creative writing, and I would have the kids write children's books. for their creative writing, and we'd read them at the local elementary school. And so I would have an example one, and I called it, it was named The Iguana and Piranha. And it's about these two friends who are these two animals who become friends in the Amazon because no one wants to hang out with a piranha except the lazy iguana named Lana. And so it's the story of the iguana and piranha, but it's really amazing because it immerses students, third graders is our target, in this book. And so it has text and it has the images. If I could share my screen, I'd be happy to show it to you all. But what was cool about it is all the characters, all the artworks. I'm not a media guy at all. And so I just went in and I generated this stuff. And I'll tell you, the place that I learned to generate really well for prompts, not LLMs, but image generators and asset generators, was honestly some social media groups where they just share images and their prompts and then how they refined them. And that honestly was the best PD I got because it is quick. I don't have to spend a lot of time and I can just take a quick pick and be like, oh, I get that. I can see why that worked. And then I can experiment on my own. And honestly, some dude doing some stuff somewhere in the world and just posting it onto Facebook. I'm old. I like Facebook. That stuff has a lot of value for me.
There's a lot there. Super interesting. And we use, Rich really has brought a superpower into growth. We're able to use ChatGPT and other tools in like new and exciting new ways. Not only is it able to help with content creation and iteration, but also you can take a really good idea that is human, and with like HubSpot, you can use content remix and then have it cut up into all these chunks and bites and things. And instead of one person spending a full workday doing that, it's now within a few clicks, which is just really interesting. So when you look at your next upgrade for your business, look at HubSpot and we'll talk and give you some tools. Shameless plugs are very welcome on the show.
Yeah, no.
What are some of we deal a lot with companies and typically established companies and a lot of them in the B2B space. Mm-hmm. When they're approaching the conversation of AI, what are some things that we could help them with to make sure that they're being like ethical about their AI usage? And maybe what are some like glaring red flags and things to stay away from?
So I think they need to be mindful about the terms, the privacy terms, right? Like how secure is their data that they're uploading it? If they have like NDAs, but then they're using a GenAI for an NDA type project, that seems really problematic to me, right? Like you need to have your own security in there. So I'd be checking about security quite a bit. Going back to the environment, it depends. It seems very unusual to me that a company that has a commitment to sustainability would be using a tool that does not have a commitment to transparency about their environmental impact. Like they're all going to impact the environment. No one's carbon neutral in the Gen AI world right now, right? But like their information should be transparent. Their information should be clear. Like if someone was like, why are you using this opposed to this? They should be able to justify their selection based on the grounds that align to their mission statement. I am a strong proponent that making money is good, but making money also has to not hurt the public. And we need to be serving the public good. And so right there, I'm like, I think tool selection and your criteria for why you select the tools you want to select, I think that's the first thing, right? Like have some criteria and do that. The second thing is take time and invest in PD for your people to learn how to prompt, right? I think that's important. The third thing that I think is really important is we talked about 1,000 startups a week, you said.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like pick 3 tools that work really well for you and like go with those tools. And like I think it's much better to go deep with a small set of tools than to just, we're going to use this for this, this for this, this for this. You're never going to keep track, right? And it's going to cost you more money at the end of the day. So I think.
Are you sure you don't work at growth? I feel like you would do really well here if you're looking for an out, by the way. Like,
No, man, no. Growth does not have to. Growth, you have no excitement. I mean, I would be repping our football team right now, but not our best year at Carolina. But basketball season's right around the corner, baby.
Okay,
Right?
for now, I'm
Yeah,
just gonna like plant that seed, I guess, for now.
there you go. But I think those things would be like that's where I would start with it. And I think as you mature, then I think your needs are going to get very specialized and deep, and I think that's good. That's what should happen over time. But I think right off the bat, make some good selections, invest in your people, and be budget conscious. And if you are going to pay for a tool, make sure your ROI is worth the payment.
Yeah, 100%. Are there any of the tools out there that are maybe the most common, ChatGPT, OpenAI?
Yeah,
On a scale
so
of
like
one to sustainable, where are they?
Yeah, so like you have to remember, UNC, we are by contract a Microsoft school. So like we're gonna have ChatGPT, we have OpenAI, we have Copilot, and so we have that, and then also we contract, so we're part of the Adobe Creative Cloud. So like Adobe Firefly is there. So Todd's secret list that he really likes, Meshy, Meshy app for text to 3D assets. It's pretty good. I haven't seen
Wow,
anything.
never heard of it.
Yeah,
That's
I
pretty
haven't
cool.
seen anything. I haven't seen anything as good. I've been really impressed with Meshi. I used it a lot for that book project that I shared with you. I have some ethical concerns, but one of the LLMs that I like is Perplexity a lot. I think Perplexity has a lot of value because it gives the links. Now, but this is like an interesting case, right? So whereas Perplexity does that and it gives you the links compared to like ChatGPT that doesn't, right? Or Gemini that doesn't really do it that much. With Perplexity, think about it though, right? So you are Chris Nault, right? And you have so much information that you've put online, right? And then I put it in a prompt into Perplexity and it says, well, Chris Nault said this and here's the link to his work. Now this becomes interesting, right? Because the link is there, but your information is there. So why do I need to click the link to go to your website when it's reporting that information, which means you're not getting compensation, notoriety, or anything else for it, which shortchanges you as the content creator. And I think that's really problematic. But at the same token, Perplexity is the only one that consistently can give me the link. One of my pet peeves with Gen AI is when people are like, it's a black box and you don't know where the information came from. I'm like, that's not true. Like,
Right.
they're not disclosing where the information came from. They scraped that from somewhere. And if Perplexity is giving me the links, why can't other LLMs give me the links? But then you have the ethical issue. But then you can play with that, take it a step further. Like, so at least I get the link to your stuff with Perplexity. ChatGPT, they're just stealing your stuff and they don't even give the person a link to find you if they wanted to, which becomes even more problematic. And that's before you get into all the hallucinations.
And then even when you say to cite the source, the link isn't always real on ChatGPT, so that doesn't help. And then leading into the ethicality of it too. I think it was Sarah Silverman was suing because they found excerpts of her books in some of the chat outputs. So there's that whole concern there too.
Yeah, and I mean, there's artists that are suing some of the image generators for taking their name, image, likeness of their work, and they're just ganking it and they're putting it in there, which is also like super problematic. There was a really interesting story a while back, I think it was in the New York Times, where they had an artist in New York and she really specialized in feminist art and it had really developed a certain style and look for it. And so she prompted one of the image generators, Dolly, I think it was, not 100% sure, to create image in that style. And it did. And she's like, I never gave permission for it to take my stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's real.
It is real. To your point about not being cited and then like creators losing visibility, like minus the legalities or lack of legalities around that, just like my marketing brain, first instinct when you're bringing that up is like, okay, well, the landscape of marketing has changed a bit. So my only ability rather than to like cry about it is to adjust. And so I'm constantly trying new things and platforms and groups. And, from a marketing standpoint, a lot of the old stuff is becoming more and more viable, even as like tacky as like a ad in front of a urinal. It's like you can actually get someone's attention for that 2 seconds. It's
Mm,
kind of wild and interesting. I talk about growth operations a lot, which is a non-coined term by like any official organization. But to me, over the last 21 years, I have found that revenue operations and sales operations, all these like siloed operational frameworks, there's been a lack of uh, an umbrella to really say, okay, well, these things exist, but how do we get them to work together to grow, right?
yeah,
And I talk about it on LinkedIn a lot, and I've written a lot of blogs about it. And then Rich, as he goes to find information about growth operations, it does seem to pull a lot of my, if I'm the only one talking about it, it's where it's getting the source material from.
mm,
It's interesting. It really is a
yeah,
conundrum, but not one
yeah.
that I'm never going to be able to solve.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting deal. So, like, we have different metrics because we're in different industries, right? But like, researchers are really into citations, right? And like, citations count a lot. Like, so I write an article, and then you write an article, and you reference my article. That's a point for me, right? And like, there's certain LLMs that have been created for researchers that actually go back to the original research. So when I write the research, right, I have to cite what I get. And so those people still get credit. But that's not apples to apples. That's not even oranges to tangerines, right? Like, you're not getting stuff, you're not getting any credit. So even though it might steal my research articles, the next researcher still has to cite it, and I still get my H index factor. Super dorky, but that's how it counts.
No, I mean, but there's a breadcrumb of the
Right.
conversation and where it's cycled from, which I think probably has a lot of value, not only to the writers, but also to like the journey of the information, which is just now gone.
Yeah.
There's no,
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you know it as well as I do. Research articles have reference pages. Ad campaigns don't.
yes, that's very, damn it.
That's true.
What excites you? So you run this mighty program. You've got 48 students in your group now. What are some of the things that they are doing that make you excited, or maybe even like optimistic for the future?
I like that a lot of the values that I have become reflected in my graduates as they choose their career paths. So like, I think that's really cool. So for example, like, I have a student, and she does an amazing, or a graduate, excuse me, and she leads up a big instructional design team for North Carolina Goodwill. And like, that's her jam. And like, she's bringing field trips to schools so they can learn STEM subjects, and she's designing that. I mentioned another one of my students who does Code the Dream. Amazing work that she's doing. And she was like last year on the cover of Durham magazine, just doing good work out there. Um, I have students who are very happy, who want to transition careers, and I'm able to transition them careers, and they're doing really cool, creating digital learning experiences and curriculum. And then I have another student who, he had this great startup out of the program, and then he was like, "This isn't for me. I want to help people, and I want to support other people." And then he's the assistant director of the business accelerator up at Georgetown, up in DC. So like,
Damn.
I like it when my students take the the experience. That's what I want to give them in the Mighty program, an experience. They take the experience that they have, and they are able to translate that experience into work that makes them happy, a career that makes them happy, but also has social value. I think people who do work but don't give back, they're just on a different track with a different mindset. And so a lot of our mission is really about serving the public good, and like, but how can you still have a career with an upward trajectory while serving the public? And I think that's what's cool. And like, we have students who become marketers of ed tech products, and like, that's what they want to do. And I'm like, go do it, but just remember that whatever you're marketing has to have value. Like, like, if it
Yeah.
doesn't have value, ethically, you might have some concerns there.
You pointed out another thing. I'm surprised. I guess shouldn't be in hindsight that we have some like very core beliefs that are very similar. And one of the things that you said, and I'm paraphrasing, is that it is harder or less visible when success is made and they do good in the same portion. And that has been really like it's not a struggle. It's something that I've shared recently that I'm most proud of. I've had my ups and downs, and I've zigged and I've zagged, but across this whole experience, I've tried to remain true to who I am, for better or worse, and leave a positive impact with the people that I work with, whether they're clients, or team members. But it seems almost more incredibly difficult to go about it the ethical way. I guess this is like a duh situation than the fast and easy or, less ethical way. Does that show up in the applicants for people part of the Mighty program or the branding of the Mighty program, that this kind of like safe do-goodism is part of what is bringing people here, or do they experience it after they've already applied?
I think they get the feel to it, but I think we attract a certain type of student who has that inherently in them. You want to work in the field of education, just not as teachers. So like naturally you're going to have some sort of caring about you, right? So I'm like, there's this wonderful professor, her name's Nault, and she talked about the role of care in teachers. And so I think that's really important. Teachers who don't care, that can be really problematic. But I would like to extend that into like caring for students, but being part of the educational industry. Like you care, like that's important. So I think there's that. The second thing is, it took me a while to learn this program because it is a bit out of field when I started. And so I kept wondering, I'm like, who are our students, right? So I did like a customer analysis, you all might call it. And I'm like, well, who are our students? Because my students are essentially customers. And I'm like, the one characteristic that I saw as the through line was volunteerism. My students like to volunteer. So think for like a TFA alumni, Teach for America, if you're familiar with that. So smart people get recruited, they go teach in different areas, and then they come back, like they volunteered there. Peace Corps alumni, AmeriCorps alumni, people who went and did work through a religious organization. Volunteerism.
Acts of service can really spur all of the things that you kind of described on your first day for students, right? Like the selflessness and being cool, because even if you're helping somebody, there's a human interaction there, so you got to be pretty cool. Can't get heated if you're being, and serving in whatever way that looks for you.
Yeah. So that's like kind of my through line, man.
I'm incredibly enthusiastic about your message being able to like reach our audience, and just as being a champion for good and still being firmly in what is happening with technology today and tomorrow.
Well, I think your point was really interesting. Like, like you have all this GenAI stuff, and like old school stuff still works. One of the things I think a lot of people are guilty of is when ChatGPT came out and everyone was like, oh, we got to get on board. And like you had like FOMA to the nth degree. Everybody forgot about the good work they were doing before ChatGPT showed up. And so I'm like, now I still think we're very much hype cycle or dread cycle, depending where you are on that. But like, it's still very early, and so I'm starting to recalibrate on my work to like move back to where my passions were. But now I've learned strategies to integrate GenAI where I need to integrate GenAI, right? And so like, I feel like education is a slower mover than industry is, right? But there are big differences between all that. But the other thing is there's this theory, technology infusion theory or something like that. And like, it talks about how there are innovators, right? And we might be classified as innovators. Like, I'm willing to try this and fail publicly and humiliate myself. I'm going to learn something. And then you have like the early adopters. And I kind of think of my students as the early adopters. Like, okay, I'm going to get on board. I'm going to learn this, right? And then you have like the early majority. So that's like hasn't hit yet, right? I think we're still in the early adopters. And that's where like the masses are like, okay, let me learn it. And then you have the late majority who are like, now I have to learn it. And then you have the laggards who are like, I would rather retire than learn this. So I think you're going to have like waves of people that come in, and I think we're just, we're on the Mayflower, buddy.
Yeah.
So like we're early
Journey
adopters.
into a new land.
Yeah, so like we're kind of
Mostly
figuring it
disease
out.
free though.
There you go.
I mean, that's a very good way to look at it. And I recorded a podcast earlier today with Brendan from Dynamico, and he, where am I going with this? I honestly just lost my
You're just
thought.
saying
I tried to thread too many needles and my brain just exploded. Oh, well, we'll digress, as I love to say. I'm definitely want to stay connected with you. We're friends, but on like a professional level, I just think there's so many insights you have that are refreshing and not necessarily like brand new, but the way that you present them is very thorough, as if you've been educated on how to do this.
Wow. Imagine that.
So we might have to check back like maybe in the beginning of the year and have you on again and see, like, I think in just a few months, this technology shift continues to evolve, but it seems to be big steps. And I agree with, we're still in the infant stages of like the early stages of early adopters.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see. I feel like policy is missing. I feel like safeguards are missing. I feel like there's can be some nefarious uses of this stuff, as we all know. And I mean, time's going to sort out some of this stuff. And then I also think, and I'll leave you with this, I guess we're getting towards the end, is, there's going to come a time when this is normalized. And I think that we need to be mindful that like that's going to occur. And so the people who are like, I'm not doing GenAI. And you're like, okay, I mean, imagine this is 1995 and you're like, I'm not going to internet. Okay, do you? And it's interesting because like, I focus a lot on teaching and learning with GenAI and thinking about that in addition to all the industry stuff that we talked about. And I'm always like, maybe we should have a center for GenAI for teaching and learning. And that gets shot down. And I'm always kind of surprised that gets shot down. And I was upset with it at first, but then I was like, maybe we don't need a center because in 3 to 5 years, this just becomes how we do business, right? We don't have like centers of internet or centers of websites, right? Like we have other stuff, So I'm just like,
that's interesting though. Okay, like I think I see what this is going to become so much a part of daily life that to make it a center would be almost illogical because it's just everywhere all the time.
Right, it's just going to become how we are, and we got disrupted. Like collectively as a society, we got disrupted. And you have to let things settle. And, I work at a university, a very good university. But universities take time to process, And so I joke and I'm always like, I'm a microwave boy in an oven world, like I want to go. And you can take that. And I'm like, I want to go. But like, there's a cadence to technology adoption. And so like, I kind of have to be mindful. You all can go way faster than I can go.
It's a blessing and a curse.
It's, what is that, Spider-Man?
Who knew? Oh, with great power comes great responsibility. And poor Rich didn't have much time to speak since we're old friends that don't get enough time to talk to each other. This is certainly like a Mike Hogg situation.
Well, like Rich, ask me your best question, Rich, on my way out.
Oh my God, we got one.
Oh, all right.
I don't know if this is the best question that I feel on the spot. No, there was something you mentioned that I wanted to get a little bit more context on in the pre-show interview, and you were talking about
the Saskatchewan Roughriders, because that's totally what we were talking about.
No. Educause Horizon Report. You were mentioning
that.
Yeah. Why is that so valuable for staying ahead?
Yeah. So, big plug to Educause Horizon Report. So if you're not familiar with that Educause is basically monitors all the trends and themes in higher education with a big slant towards technology. And so every year they convene a panel of experts, and they use something called the Delphi methodology. So they continually like survey people and ask questions, but it's a strict panel to get consensus about what are the trends and what are the themes and patterns that we can expect to see in higher education this year. And so they've been doing this report for many years at this point. And what was interesting with the Horizons report is this year they took GenAI and they made it a legacy theme, meaning, you know, it's not new. It's been here last year. It's going to be here next year. And this is where we are. And what they're finding, and they do a lot of research about it. I really respect Educause as an organization. There's many that I have concerns about, but Educause is not one of them right now. But what they're finding is like they're starting to see a shift in usage of faculty's interests into GenAI. So like for a while, it was like 5% of faculty tried it, 5%. Now it's like in the 40s or 50s%. But think about what that actually means. If faculty is preparing the future workforce, right, but only a small percentage of them are bringing in GenAI into their teaching and learning, right, to their courses, then they're not really preparing. And broadly speaking, this is not UNC specific, this is broadly speaking. Yeah. But then they're not preparing the workforce with the skills, the technical skills they need to be successful. So then when you have a graduate who shows up, and let's just say this graduate shows up at Bank of America or something, then Bank of America would have to train these people. And so as more faculty get on board, because the faculty have to get upskilled before they can upskill their students. And so that's what I'm really interested in is like, again, I'm an innovator early adopter. So like my students get a big dose of it. But like I have colleagues over in other disciplines who are just like, meh, you know? And so like, until you get those people like on board, there's going to be inconsistencies in related to how we're preparing our future workforce for industry, which like then leads into a lot of other stuff like our national competitors, right? Like we have to, these skills have to be there. And I think universities, according to that Horizons report, are starting to trend in a more positive direction than they have previously. So I'm excited about that.
That's good to see.
What a cool barometer too of just like where we are in the stages of like early adopter to like mass adoption. I feel like the Horizons report acts as a maybe indirect or almost direct barometer of where we are as these trends happen. Because if it happens,
it's like
great.
Yeah, it's like a nice I kind of think of it as like a preview to what to expect for the year. You know,
yeah.
Like, and then you plug in and you do your work where you want to do it.
I think that's great. We do have an end of episode question that we'd love to ask guests, and I'm super curious what your answer is going to be.
What is the last song on your Spotify?
On my Spotify.
Or music listening.
Or music
okay, because all my students always make fun of me. So I'm like, oh man. So I'm really... So I listen to most of my streaming when I work out, not when I run, when I work out. And so I'm into like some of these like new breakout country artists. It's embarrassing.
Oh, right. Shabuzi? Like not necessarily a country.
No, like dudes, I can't even come up with their name, but I'm like, I just need some background noise. So I'm like,
I love it.
Yeah, so I'm like up and coming artists are kind of there. And then I will tell you, this is also kind of embarrassing. I listen to a lot of Fleetwood Mac as a father. I'm like, as I've gotten older, I'm like, I've started to really identify with like Fleetwood Mac. Like they have like funny little lyrics about like raising kids, like children grow older and I'm growing older too. So I say that to my kids. And then yesterday we had some old school Jay-Z. Because every time my kids want something, I'm like, no, it's a hard knock life. And they're like, why do you keep telling me it's a hard knock life, Dad? And I'm like, well, sit down, Annie, and let me tell you about that. And so like, yeah, so like, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so that's probably some of my jams right now.
And we'll do some outroing like shameless plugs. But before we end, Adam Kelly, Mr. Red, was mentioned a few weeks ago, and he called me. which was an odd experience.
I like
But
it.
he specifically requested that we mention him again. And with you being here, you just want him to know that we've talked about Adam Kelly, and he's a pretty good dude.
Let's give Adam Kelly a quick shout out. So yeah, I will. So like Adam Kelly was the captain of our rugby team back in like the mid and early 2000s. And we were a very, very good rugby team. And like, it should be noted that like, I mean, we were very good for a college team. We didn't have a coach. So you had a 20, 21, 22-year-old kid who was learning rugby, was very good at rugby, and then led us to like, I think we lost 3 games in 5 years there or something under his leadership.
Yeah.
Adam Kelly is one of the 2 best leaders. I have maybe 3 now because my old dean was really good. But like one of the 3 best leaders I've ever been under in my life. Like his ability for leadership at that point was unbelievable. I mean, he put the curtails on you, Biggins.
I know, man. By the way, the name he used is my college rugby nickname. Todd gave it to me. And yeah, I God damn it, Adam. I can't believe he's getting this much airtime. That's how I feel about him. He was a great leader, and he probably imprinted on me some things that are still with me. That's all the airtime he's getting on this episode.
Cut it.
We're out. But thank you. You
sure.
are an incredibly valuable resource, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. You're going to be a legend. You're
legend.
doing great stuff.
I like it. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'm about to go teach class in a little bit.
Before we go, we got our last few shameless plugs. But Todd, what's the best way for people to follow you, get connected with you? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. You can also just Google Todd Cherner. I'm the only Todd Cherner in the world.
PhD, baby.
Awesome.
Doctor.
Degree.
If you're catching the podcast for the first time and you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe and notification bell. If you're on Spotify, hit the follow button. If you want to find other ways to get connected with us, you can join the Redwood Grove community. Link is in the description. And also check out Chris's crazy idea, the HubSpot Breeze AI cohort free workshop that we're throwing here at Growth, also in the show notes. Todd, thanks so much for being here today. This was awesome. I got to hear a lot, confirmed a lot of biases I had on AI. So thank you for that.
There you go.
Appreciate you, man. Have a great day. Go Mighty. Go Tar Heels.
Heels. Go Heels.